friends, welcome to the video. I'm Olivia, and if you've never seen my face before, you can consider me your fragrance fairy godmother. So if you guys didn't join me last week, I did a little bit of a declutter. It's the beginning of the year, and I wanted to weed out some fragrances that I wasn't all that enthusiastic with to make room for some new fragrances. And when I say some, I mean quite a bit. So today we have a haul of a bunch of new niche fragrances. I honestly think that I could do this in 2 parts, but I'm going to attempt to do this in one fell swoop. So we've got a lot of fragrances to get through, so let's get into it. But before we begin, I'm very excited to announce that we actually have a sponsor for today's video, and that is Ritual. I have been very open and honest with you guys about the changes that I have made in my life towards health lately. I stopped drinking alcohol, I stopped smoking cigarettes, I go to the gym 5 days a week, but if I'm being honest, I still love my McDonald's and I could use a little help in the vitamins department. So you can imagine my excitement when Ritual reached out to me, because little did they know, I've been using their products before they even knew about me. Starting off with the Essential for Women 18+. These are multivitamins that are made with high quality nutrients to help fill common dietary gaps, and I know for sure that I fall into that category. They're vegan, they're non-GMO, they're gluten-free, major allergen-free, and made without artificial colorants. These key nutrients help to support your brain health, your bone health, and your blood health. And what I especially like about these is that they can be delivered directly to your door, because I get anxiety in grocery stores. And if you don't love them after 30 days, they accept returns, no questions asked. And if you're wondering, they smell like mint. No matter how balanced your diet is, some nutrients are very difficult to get from food, so it's always a good thing to add in a multivitamin. So if you guys are interested in getting on your multivitamin game for a limited time, they are going to have 40% off of your purchase. My regular multivitamin is usually $33, and with my discount code, that would be $19.80. All of the information is going to be in my description box down below, so if you guys are interested, check that out, and thank you to Ritual for sponsoring this portion of the video. Now, let's get into it. First up is Amorous Intense by Nitus. Do you guys remember those caramel apple lollipops that used to be super popular back in the 90s? This reminds me of the Perfume version of it. You have a juicy Granny Smith apple along with a caramel, but this is the more perfumed version. I don't want you to think super duper edible, because there is some grounding notes to this, such as some florals, a little bit of coffee. I've worn this a couple times, and in my opinion, this is a very fun scent, but it is extremely sweet for my taste, so I think I need to experiment with layering this with something that's a little bit more deep to ground it out. The sweetness comes off a little bit plasticky. I have to play with this one a little bit, but so far I enjoy it with a caveat. Some days I'm not in the mood for that amount of sweetness. Next is from a brand that is the sister company of Nitus, and that is Vivamore, and this is called Caramel Pop. As you imagine, this is a caramel fragrance, but there is a big dose of roasted chestnuts. There's also the note of popcorn, which I can kind of smell, but it's kind of drowned out by that nuttiness that you're getting from the chestnut. There's a warmth coming from some vanilla and benzoin, and there is a strong dose of woodiness. So although this is a gourmand fragrance, there is a lot of earthiness coming from this as well, making this a little bit more my speed because it has some balance to it. It somewhat bears a resemblance to Praline and Maple by Scents of Wood. This one is a little bit deeper, and this one is a little bit more caramel forward, but if you like one, you would definitely like the other. Next up, I have 2 from a brand that I discovered at Scent Explore, and this is called Amour Oud. Let's start with Dark Orchid. I am having an absolute love affair with this fragrance. This is very floral dominant, but the florals come off so supple and creamy with the sandalwood in the base that adds a little bit of milkiness, along with a little bit of a sweet vanilla and some incense and patchouli that give it a little bit of dark spice. This has the note of ylang ylang, and sometimes to me, ylang ylang can come off almost like a banana custard. So this is vanilla floral with almost a creamy banana touch and a little bit of spiciness. I really like this one. Next is called White Sands. In the beginning, you are going to get a lot of orange blossom that's going to make this feel very summertime, but I don't want you to think a sweet orange blossom that's super feminine, but rather a unisex take, because this has some black pepper and a little bit of a pine-like quality, a little bit of greenness coming from some cypress. There's also some woodiness coming from sandalwood and oud, and a little bit of musk to make this smell very clean. So overall, this is a woody summertime fragrance with a little bit of fresh spiciness leaning on the unisex side. Very refreshing, but I'm going to have to revisit this in summer because right now this doesn't really feel appropriate for the weather. Next up is from another brand that I discovered at Scent Explore, and this is from the brand Tcoat, and they have really interesting fragrances. So their fragrances are very challenging in my opinion. They are based on experiences and create a scenario around you. They had ones that smelled like a bloody hospital with bandages, it smelled like formaldehyde. I mean, I had such a visceral reaction when smelling that fragrance. I can't recall the name off the top of my head, but I will put it down here. So I decided to go with one that's a little bit easier to the nose, and this one is called Curtain Call. This one is supposed to evoke the emotion of the velvet drapes in an old theater, the scent of the chairs that are worn in a little bit, but interestingly enough, to me, this is almost like a bespoke version of La Nuit Trésor, just a little bit, because this is a gourmand floral. This is a gentle rose with a sweet praline and musk, but there is a bit of tobacco in the base that makes it feel a little bit dusty and have a bit of a patina on it. So this would be good for someone who likes a floral that has some sweetness but also has a little bit of oomph and a little bit of maturity. I chose this one because I wanted something a little bit easier to tell you guys about, because although I can very much appreciate the artistry that goes into creating scenarios, I personally don't want to smell like a bloody hospital. Next is from the brand Moresque, and this is called Modern Oud. This is going to be for a person who loves a woody, fresh green fragrance. This does have an oud, but instead of coming off barnyard and thick and sticky, this comes off a little bit more sheer and dry with some hinoki as well. There is a little bit of an uplifting tangy quality in the beginning with some citrus, and once again has that pine needle natural green smell to it. So if you like the scent of nature and you want something woody that is not smoky and a little bit more fresh and uplifting, this is beautiful, and the longevity so far has been great for me. Next is Chocolate Citronique by Sphinx. If you guys like Chocolate Musk by Al Rehab, I think that you are going to love this because this is like the super powered version. This is going to give you the same effect of a sheer, fluffy, powdery chocolate, but this one has a little bit more nuance because it has some orange. So it smells like one of those chocolate candied oranges that you could break apart. I don't know if they even make those anymore, but it strikes a deep nostalgia. But what I like about this one is that this is very balanced. It's not overly sweet. It's got an airiness to it, but it lasts a decent amount of time for me and has some nuance, making it a little bit more interesting than Choco Musk. But if you like that one, you'll definitely like this. Next is Ertica Heart. This is going to be a tropical summertime fragrance. It has notes of a slightly green semi-ripe mango with a sweet pineapple. There's also some booziness, so it's going to give it a tropical drink on the beach touch, but it is nicely balanced and not too sweet because of that booze and the slight bit of greenness coming from the mango. In my experience, the projection and the performance of this house is absolutely nuclear. You do not need a lot, and they last you 14 hours plus. This is another fragrance that I'm waiting for summer and springtime to come around so that way I can really see it shine, because in the winter, this is not really what I'd be reaching for. Next is Sol Salgado. This is a super mimosa flower dominant fragrance, and if you've never smelled mimosa flower, they are fluffy and clean, a little bit sweet with a little bit of a green nuance, but they are very, very distinct smelling. That's what I get in the beginning. This is a very powdery floral fragrance. It has a little bit of vanilla and a little bit of saltiness. This reminds me of Olympia by Paco Rabanne, but this is much more powdery and much more floral, but you still get that salty vanilla touch. It's very comforting, but you have to be a floral lover to enjoy this. Next is Royal Bourbon. This is another fragrance I'm having a love affair with because this is a wintertime, warm, spicy, slightly sweet fragrance that is reminiscent of Tom Ford Tobacco Vanille and Kilian's Smoking Hot, as if they had a baby. You're going to get a vanilla, a tobacco, a cinnamon, and a booze. This is right up my alley. If you guys have been watching this channel for a while, you know that this scent profile is all me all day. And although I have a lot of fragrances within this vein, it doesn't feel redundant. I finally got my hands on a bottle of Lyra, and I'm sure you guys have heard about this fragrance time and time again, but this is a citrusy gourmand fragrance. To me, it almost smells like a lemon custard with a creme brulee top. There's something a little bit of a burnt sugar sort of quality about it. But I caution you, this does have a licorice note, and some days I can smell it, and some days I can't smell it. I like this overall, but the days that I can smell the licorice, I get frustrated with it. So I do enjoy this in the air, I just avoid smelling it too closely. Next is 5 p.m. So this is an interesting fragrance because it does a total 180. In the beginning, you're going to get a ton of citrus, and as it dries down, it's almost like a spiced jasmine green tea, but then all of a sudden you start to get some gourmand aspects to it. It's as if you are sitting in a coffee house or a tea house, enjoying a tea, having a little bit of a pastry on the side, and it's the culmination of the scents in the air, with tea being the most dominant fragrance. So when you see those notes, take it with a grain of salt because this is not sticky sweet. This is more of a fresh, spiced tea with a little bit of a gourmand aspect in the background. Next is Overture. Ugh, guys, this one. This is the fragrance of my dreams, and I have worn this several times now. This is an amber cinnamon fragrance. This is going to be somewhat reminiscent of one of my favorite fragrances, you guys already know, Invite Only by Kayali, but this is much more unisex. You are getting an incense, a sandalwood, a vanilla. It is very rich, very amber dominant with a little bit of a smoky nuance in the background. It is a beast, but it has this magical warmth to it, and it is a total wintertime fragrance, so I am going to wear this like crazy before LA starts to get hot again. Now, Born to Stand Out recently came out with 3 new fragrances, and you'll see that I only have 2 here because I decluttered one of them that I absolutely could not stand, and if you want to check that out, that is in last week's video. So let's start off with my favorite of the 3, and that is Mad Honey. You guys already know. You already know that I am a rose girl, and this is a rose vanilla boozy fragrance with honey and pink pepper. If you like Kayali's Sweet Diamond Pink Pepper, this is going to be a distant cousin of it, or Rose's Vanille. This is such a delicious fragrance because you're getting that booziness, but you are getting a photorealistic honey and vanilla. So it almost smells like a creamed honey with rose and booze. It is so freaking good. Instant love. Instant love. Next one is called Happy Nuts. This also has honey and rum, but has a very, very powdery almond. It has some grounding notes like tobacco, but I find this to be a little bit redundant because it reminds me of another fragrance in their collection. It is very reminiscent of their fragrance Sin and Pleasure. The jury's out as to which one I like better. If you like something that's a little bit more earthy, I would go with this one. If you like something that's a little bit more sweet, powdery, and nutty, I would go with Happy Nuts. But I do enjoy them both. I just find them a little bit redundant because there are quite a few notes that they utilize in the both of them. I am going to have to break this in two parts because I simply am not going to be able to get through all of these fragrances today. So we are going to wrap up with two new ones that I got from New Notes. First up is Latte De Cherry. This is yet another super sticky sweet maraschino cherry with a little bit of spiciness, with a little bit of powdery almond, and is going to be reminiscent of Tom Ford Lost Cherry, the one from Banana Republic, Kayali. They all blend together in my mind because cherry is just a note that dominates a fragrance. If you have one cherry fragrance, to decipher between them is pretty difficult. So if you already have a cherry fragrance, I would skip on this if I'm being honest. But if you're looking into a cherry fragrance, the performance of this is great. It smells nice. It's just so redundant in my collection. We're gonna wrap up today with one called Ertica Minimal. So this is going to be for those of you who like a rose fragrance that has a little bit of a classic scent profile. It doesn't smell too retro or too dated, but to some noses might think that it smells a little bit mature. I just happen to really enjoy rose fragrances. But the reason that this smells a little mature is because there's not a lot of sweetness to it. So it's a natural smelling rose with a big blast of a powdery, almost waxy iris that's reminiscent of a vintage lipstick. There's a little bit of a spicy green touch in the beginning coming from some coriander, as well as a little bit of a dirty patchouli in the base, and it's ever slightly sweetened up with some amber and vanilla. So this will be great for those of you who like a powdery lipsticky rose that has a little bit of an earthy, slightly dirty animalic touch that makes it a little bit more modern and a little bit edgy. Sorry that I wasn't able to get through all of these fragrances in one video. I don't like to do two-part videos because personally I find them kind of boring, but hauls are exciting because we get to try out a bunch of new stuff together. But just to give you a visual of why I'm breaking this into two, otherwise this video would be ridiculously long. Look at this. We have all of these to talk about next week. So if you're interested in checking out some of the new goods, because I've got some bankers in next week's video, I hope that you guys will join me. If you haven't already subscribed, do the thing. You guys know what to do. Take care of others, and most importantly, take care of yourselves, my friends.